Welcome here for the 2023 street utility improvements. I see a lot of familiar faces from the first neighborhood meeting. This is our second neighborhood meeting for the project. Project area. So we're looking at 12th Avenue North from Main Street to First Street North, 14th and 15th Avenue North from Main Street to Second Street North, 16th Avenue North from Main Street to First and Second to Third, and then the short segment of Second Street North from 14th to 15th. So our project development process right now, we're in the feasibility stage towards the end of it. During this stage, we scope out the improvements of the project. We put together preliminary design layouts, identify constraints and general impacts, and put together estimated costs and preliminary assessment amounts. Our next step, which would begin after next Tuesday's public hearing, would be final design and bidding. We've developed the plans for construction and specifications, identified detailed impacts of properties, and then put together final estimated costs and final assessment amounts. So resident questionnaires, earlier this summer, we sent out questionnaires. We got 30 responses back, so thank you for that. Most common responses were sidewalk is needed along 14th Avenue along Metzel Field on the east side. We are proposing to extend the sidewalk along the east side of Metzel Field, east side of 14th Avenue along Metzel Field. Also sidewalk was requested along First Street North between 14th and 15th Avenue, and then also between 15th and 16th Avenue at the last meeting. We are proposing to extend the sidewalk there, those two half blocks, fill in those gaps. So that'll be continuous sidewalk from 14th to 16th. And then sidewalk have a lot of low spots in the existing walk, with pond and build up water, get icy in the winter. So we are replacing all the sidewalk throughout the neighborhood with appropriate grades for adequate drainage. There's reported drainage issues at 16th Avenue North and Main Street. We will be installing new curb and gutter and additional storm sewer catch basins in this intersection to improve drainage and at other intersections as well. And then lastly, there's some overgrown and unhealthy trees throughout the neighborhood. Trees within the boulevard and city right of way have been and will continue to be evaluated by the project team and the city forester to determine what trees need to be removed as part of the project. Project team will also try to protect healthy trees within the neighborhood that can be saved as well. Existing pavement conditions, you can see, here's some pictures of the existing streets. A lot of cracking, alligator cracking, transverse cracking, patching, potholes, you name it. Most of you know the condition of the street is in very poor condition today. Here's an example of a reconstructed street. This is actually 8th Avenue North, just north of Main Street, that was redone in 2012. The new streets in your neighborhood will look very similar: new pavement, new curb and gutter, new sidewalks. So street improvements. So most of the streets are going to be receiving the same improvements: new pavement, new base under the pavement, new curb and gutter, new sidewalks, like I mentioned before, new concrete driveway aprons. Most of the streets are going to be the existing width. For example, 12th Avenue will remain the same width as it is today. Exception to this, a couple areas, one of them being 15th Avenue north of the alleys near Main Street. It's going to be narrowed by a few feet. Currently, it's 35 feet wide today. That's excessively wide for a residential street. The normal width is 30 to 32 feet wide. So we're proposing to go on that wider side at 32 feet wide. So narrowing about 1.5 feet on each side of the road. This will widen the boulevard to help improve with snow storage in the winter, safety for pedestrians, and better, healthier area for boulevard trees to grow. Yep, so the question was to review the street widths one more time on 15th Avenue. So north of the alleys, just north of Main Street there, we are going to narrow the road about 1.5 feet on each side, from 35 feet total width to 32 feet total width. That is wider or matches most of the streets in the city and in the neighborhood. For example, 16th Avenue North, just a block over, is only 30 feet wide. Yep, the sidewalks remain in about the same spot. The boulevard will be a little wider. So the grass area. So we can get into it a little more. I'll continue with the presentation, we can talk about that a little more. I know that was a little heated topic before too. So next slide. 16th Avenue North. Again, we'll be doing the same existing street width, so 30 feet wide here. Most of the streets were matching existing grades and elevations. However, this street and a couple other streets, we might have to do this where we're actually going to lower the street a little bit to improve the drainage. From end to end on this block of 16th Avenue North, from 2nd to 3rd, it's extremely flat with nowhere for the water to go. So we're going to lower the road roughly mid-block and extend and add storm sewer catch basins to have a place for the water to drain. Some pedestrian improvements that I mentioned before, 14th Avenue North, we're going to extend the sidewalk that currently stops at 2nd Street North all the way down to 1st Street North on the east side along Metzel Field. We do have to narrow the road here slightly just to fit in that sidewalk from 35.5 feet to 34 feet, so 1.5 feet total narrowing. We want to keep that street wider because we know all the parking along Metzel Field during events. The other pedestrian improvements, besides replacing all the sidewalks to the neighborhood, we're also adding sidewalk on 1st Street North between 14th and 15th on the north side to fill in that gap between the alley and 14th. And then on the other side, between 16th and the alley between 15th and 16th to fill in that gap. So now there should be continuous sidewalk, at least on one side of the road along 1st Street from 16th all the way down to 5th. So moving on to utility improvements. First utility to get replaced is sanitary sewer. We're going to be replacing all the old clay sewer pipe throughout the neighborhood with new plastic PVC pipe, and also replacing all the sanitary manholes as well. Water main, we're going to be replacing all of the old 6-inch cast iron pipe, which is a brittle pipe, with new 8-inch ductile iron pipe, a more durable pipe that we're also upsizing from 6 to 8 inch to increase capacity and fire flows. We'll also be replacing all the water valves and hydrants. Along with the main replacements, we'll be replacing individual water and sewer services from the main in the street, both sanitary and water, to the property line or the right-of-way line at each property. That right-of-way line is typically right behind the public sidewalk. And then from the right-of-way to the house, individuals have the opportunity, if they want to replace the rest of their service using a private plumber. It might be a good time to do that with the road being opened up and yard being disturbed, but that would be an expense on the homeowner. Boulevard trees. Trees may be removed for one of 4 reasons. So first being that they're an ash tree. Most of these trees in the neighborhood have already been removed. You might know some stumps are still around that we'll grind those out during the project. Trees might be in poor condition, so they're dead or dying, leaning, overgrowing. Conflict with utilities. These are mainly conflict with the sewer and water service lines I was just talking about. Sometimes these water and sewer services go directly under a tree. It's just unavoidable. We got to take that tree down. Conflict with road construction or grading. This would mainly be if a boulevard tree is overgrowing the curb line or heaving up the sidewalk. It's just getting too big for the space that it's in. And all trees that we remove will get replaced at a 1:1 ratio, and we'll reach out to individuals who are getting a tree removed, and you'll have a choice. I believe it's one of 10 options of species. We try to give everyone their first choice, but we also try to diversify the species. So not everyone can pick a sugar maple, but usually we can give people their first or second choice of tree. Project costs. So this project for the street and utility improvements on 12th, 14th, 15th, and 16th and 2nd come to about $5.8 million. There is a street maintenance part of this project too that we're not going to talk about. It's actually going to be right outside of City Hall here, where we're just going to be doing mill and overlay and reclaim, some more street surfacing, maintenance activities. That's a little over $500,000. Then building in 15% of contingencies and 20% of engineering costs. We're looking at about $8.8 million for total project costs. So the project will be funded through five funding sources. The main one being the general taxes and bonds. About 40% of the project will be funded through that. The other will be special assessments, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. That'll be a little over $1 million. And then the water, sanitary sewer, and storm sewer funds about half of the project. So special assessments. Assessments are proposed for all reconstructed streets. Most of you or all of you should have received individual letters with estimated assessment amounts that were mailed a couple of weeks ago. They're made up of a couple of parts. The first being the street assessment is 70% of the total street improvement costs. And this will vary for each property based on the front footage. So a 60-foot lot would get assessed more than a 40-foot lot. The front foot rate is subject to a cap, however. We'll get into that on the next slide. Streets with no adjacent property addresses, so 2nd Street North, will be distributed 1 block north and south for those assessments. However, this may not apply if property is already assessed on a current or recent improvement project, which I'll talk about a little bit too here. Utility mains, so the storm sewer, water main, and sanitary sewer main. There are no assessments for that. That's all from the city funds. And then utility services. So those individual services are assessed to each property owner, but just at 50% of the actual as-bid costs for single family residential. And then any commercial or apartment building properties, those are 100% of the actual as-built costs. So the total assessment would be that utility service assessment plus the street assessment. So those special assessment caps that I mentioned earlier. So the 2023 front foot rate cap is $103.05 a foot. So to figure out your street assessment, you basically would just multiply that $103 times the width of your lot. So if your lot is 50 feet wide, 50 feet times $103. And that gets your street assessment. That's only for single family residential properties. Same with the front footage cap, which I don't think applies to any of the properties in this neighborhood, but we would cap it at 125 feet. So if there's a lot over 125 feet wide, we'd stop at 125 feet for the assessment calculation. Caps don't apply to the commercial properties or apartment buildings. However, we did take benefit appraisals for these properties, so we will use the lower of the two amounts, benefit appraisal versus city policy. So a summary of the preliminary assessments. We have 132 total properties that are proposed to be in an assessment. These assessments range heavily from as low as $2,800 to as much as $76,000 for one of the larger commercial properties. There's 108 typical single family residential properties to be assessed. These are all the properties with full reconstruct with new utility services. There are 15 single family residential properties currently proposed to be assessed for those 2nd Street North improvements. These would be the 200 blocks of 14th Avenue North and 15th Avenue North. However, these assessments will likely be reduced or even eliminated due to the fact that they received an assessment back in the 2011 project. And that assessment was at the cap at the time. So if 2nd Street would have been included during that project, they wouldn't have been assessed for that. So we're trying not to double dip on assessments for those properties. Then lastly, there's 9 commercial properties or apartment buildings to be assessed. And again, the lower amount is used between the city policy versus the benefit appraisal. Summary of payment options. So you can either prepay in full or part without any interest until roughly the end of July. These dates are tentative. We'll confirm them in the spring when the assessments are final. Second option is a prepay in full or part with interest until about November of next year. The third option is the most popular option because you don't have to do anything. The remaining balance just rolls over onto your taxes after that November date of next year. This will be paid annually over 15 years with an interest rate. Typically we see around 5%, but again, we'll confirm that in the spring. And then the last would be deferred assessments. This is the least popular because the assessment doesn't go away. It just continues to accrue interest. But if you had to push it off, this could be an option if you were eligible for it. And to be eligible, it has to be a homestead property, and you have to have an income limit of approximately $40,000. And you have to be one of the following: an owner 65 years age or more, active military, or on full-time disability. And again, those dates, the interest rate, and those income limits are tentative at the moment. So upcoming project schedule, next Tuesday, November 1st, at the regular city council meeting, the council will conduct a public hearing on improvements and consider ordering the final plans. On January 17th, we'll come back to city council to ask them to approve final plans and authorize bidding. On February 10th, we'll open bids from contractors. February 21st, we'll go back to council to order the public hearing on assessments. Sometime in early March, we'll have a third and final neighborhood meeting where we will review final assessments, go over the final plans, collect input, and go over tentative construction schedule. And then March 21st, we will have another council meeting where we'll conduct the public hearing on assessments, consider adopting the assessment role, and awarding the contract to the low bidder. Then construction would occur in May to October. Construction could start in April if weather allows. And then final punch lists and cleanup items could go into November or the spring of the following year. There is a website for the project. It's hopkins-2023.com. Here you can sign up for email and text updates. They'll be sent out on a weekly basis throughout construction. We'll also be uploading, we have uploaded and will be uploading documents such as the feasibility report, assessment rolls, these figures that you see behind me, this presentation, and the video. So again, that's hopkins-2023.com. So two main project contacts is myself, project manager of Bolton & Mank, and then Eric, who introduced himself earlier, city engineer. And that's it for the presentation. I'm going to open it up to questions for anybody online first to make sure, see if they have anything. It's just hard to hear the Q&A from the room here. So Madeline, is there anybody online who has questions?
Yeah, we have one that's, how can the city assess this amount when the state has a law that states the city cannot assess a property for any more than the value of the property increase due to the project improvements?
I can answer that one. So the way the policy is written, it doesn't.
Nick, you're hard to hear, by the way.
Here, I'll move. Sorry. So this is Eric Klingbeil, city engineer, responding.
Oh, got it. Thank you.
Yeah. So the assessment policy is written in such a way that, and especially with the caps in place, it doesn't assess, or we don't assess for more than the benefit the property does receive. We have had multiple people have challenged assessments in the past and gone to and had a benefit appraisal done on their property, and every single time it's been or the benefit has been considerably more than the assessment amount. And that's one of the reasons why we do have these caps in place, is to avoid running into a situation where we would be afoul of state law on that one.
Thank you, Eric. And yeah, going back to those caps, so it's at $103 a foot is what we have it capped at, which is we do a 3% increase every year from prior projects. And if we didn't do those caps, the amount per foot would be closer to $200 a foot. So those are the actual costs, but we're capping it at that $100 a foot. So it's considerably cheaper.
Perfect. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna ask any other questions.
Yep, we had another one. Current resident on 14th Avenue North between Main Street and First Avenue. They've seen an increase in the street being used for parking for the new brewery and by the beauty school for parking. Since these businesses use their street for, or that street for their benefit, does this assessment include them as well?
So yes, there are assessments applied to the Main Street properties on the corners of 14th and 12th. And 15th and 16th. Yep, that gets, and so the funds from the project come through from whom? Yep, I can go back to that slide.
One thing to, due to a scheduling conflict, the park board meeting tonight, so if you go along with the pull these out in the hallway, so we'll be there all night. I just want to let everyone know. 6:15 we do have 3 parties.
So funding sources, like I said, majority of project, 40% is general taxes, bonds, that the city's been preparing for the last 5 years while it's been the CIP. Special assessments is about $1 million. So that's special assessments from everybody who live in the project. Yep. So you're part of that wedge, that 13%. And then the water fund, sanitary sewer fund, and storm sewer fund is also funds that the city plans for each utility. So the question was, are there other ways of funding the project? Have other things been explored?
That would be a better question for our finance director, Nick Bishop, on that one. But yes and no. We're always looking for other funding sources, especially, state money, federal money, grants that are out there. As for sales taxes, things like that, I guess I can't speak to that. That would be a question for the finance director. But I would say this is the funding sources we're using here. I would say 95% of all cities in Minnesota, this is the same funding model they use. The council and the finance director. Yeah, yep. I work at the pleasure of the council.
Some other questions coming online.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. We should take the online one so that way we can end the online recording. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Madeline.
All good. Yeah. So another one that came in, how would they coordinate any work they want for their section of sewer and water lines with the overall project?
How would they coordinate their own private work with water and sewer lines with the overall project, I'm guessing?
That's my understanding.
Okay, so you could coordinate with we'll have an inspector on site, or they could coordinate with me as well for the best timing of that. Really, they can do it anytime they want, but there will be more optimal times right after we do our portion of the utility work and before we do the turf restoration would be the best time to take off where we left off with our utility work and do it before we finish the sidewalk and the grass and everything, so they're not tearing up things we just replaced. But they can coordinate that with the project team, and there'll be more information, more contacts as we get closer to construction for on-field contacts.
Perfect. Another question, will their homes tax assessed value increase too, because this would duplicate this tax, correct?
No, the county will not come and reassess right after this project. I'm not sure of the county's assessing schedule, but no, this does not increase the amount, the county assessed amount that they're taxed on.
All right, a comment received was a goal of this project is to improve walkability around Hopkins by adding sidewalks. To better meet that goal, there needs to be a sidewalk along 2nd Street North between 14th Avenue and 15th Avenue. So So just a comment given.
Sure.
Yeah, that we're adding sidewalk in as many places as we feasibly can. The problem in that stretch there is the streets. It would involve some more tree removal in there. And yeah, guess there was a couple reasons why we didn't there, but mainly was additional tree removals in there. And also the traffic volumes on Second are quite a bit lower than those on First as well. So this is actually the first we've ever heard of any requests for being on Second. It is something I guess we can look into as we enter final design. Yeah, that's why we like people to fill out the comment cards when we sent them out earlier in, what was it, May? Because we are reactive to comments. We can't just do a blanket everything over the whole city. But yeah, that is something we definitely can take into account as we progress into design.
Excellent. And then one last comment so far that I can see is that understanding that this type of work impacts everyone differently. Was there any consideration given to the increase in inflation? Did that play a role in how you assessed? And this person said they would imagine this is significant for most parties in terms of cost and being forced to either pay in full or take a loan. The financial impact has the potential of being greater given inflation as it stands, correct?
Well, actually, the assessment cap does not factor in inflation. It uses a standard, well, it uses average inflation over the course of, I believe it was the last 50 years. So in an instance like this, where inflation is greater than 3%, the cap is actually artificially suppressing the assessments even lower than they would be had there been no cap on there.
Right, that's all we have right now for comments. I guess this is the last call for any comments or questions in the chat. Otherwise, we can end the Zoom meeting.
Okay. Yep. Sounds good. Sounds like we're running out of time in this room. So thank you everyone for joining online. And yeah, this presentation will be posted to the website. Thanks, Madeline.
Yep, thanks everyone.